Please welcome back to the stage CHPC Executive Director Howard Slatkin, and welcome founding partner of Curtis and Ginsberg Architects, CHPC President Mark Ginsberg.
CHPC's advocacy for zoning reform to promote housing supply and affordability has long, deep roots. Over the years, with the benefit of insights from people like Mark and our zoning committee, CHPC has produced a wide range of zoning reform proposals on topics from green buildings and solar energy to zoning envelopes to the diversity of housing types in our neighborhoods. We've proposed these reforms because we don't just need more housing, we also need better housing and more kinds of it to meet New Yorkers' needs through every phase of our lives. There's no one simple trick for housing, and the details do matter. The City of Yes zoning changes came at a moment when we needed ambitious action. And while some people may have been skeptical at first about the chances that these changes had of becoming reality, it really delivered. The effect of these changes can't be fully summarized with a simple number of projected housing units. The changes reflect a shift in purpose, an understanding that zoning shouldn't try to prevent everything but one specific thing from happening on any particular site, but rather, zoning needs to allow buildings and neighborhoods and people's lives within them to evolve and change.
You all know that the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity allows more floor area for affordable housing in higher density districts, more apartment buildings on wide streets near transit, and accessory dwelling units. But there's so many more changes that have profound benefits for housing and affordability. I promised everyone that not to keep you here all day and put you to sleep, so I will highlight just a couple. New flexibility in courts, yards, and dormers doesn't just let us build more affordable housing or even on even irregular lots, but it also allows us to design better interior spaces. In addition to accessory units, it's now possible to build a two-family house in a two-family district without worrying about dwelling unit factor or, in many cases, impractical parking requirements. And remarkably, with reorganization, the zoning resolution is actually 281 pages shorter, 8% reduction. This is the same length as Vishen Chakrabarty's book on some of your tables, which may or may not be coincidence.
Turning great ideas, which we're always happy to supply here at CHPC, into meaningful change is complicated. It requires not just a sound set of priorities, but also leadership and the ability to lead a public conversation about change. Which brings us to our final award of the day. And to introduce our awardee, I am happy to welcome to the stage the Assembly member from the 69th District, the Honorable Micah Lasher.
Thank you so much, Howard and Mark and Richard, for the leadership that you provide, and to everybody at CHPC, and for giving me the great honor to be with you today. CHPC's leadership and groundbreaking research over so many years has helped move the Overton window bit by bit and laid the groundwork for the tectonic shift that has occurred in the public discourse around the need to create housing in New York and across the country. What our final honoree did in extraordinary fashion was turn that shift in public understanding into a dramatic shift in policy. I've had the privilege of friendship with Dan Garodnick for more than 20 years now. Dan possesses a remarkable combination of skills and attributes: deep intelligence and intellectual curiosity, steely resolve, and oh so polite persistence, an unusual capacity to connect with people and meet them where they're at, and a healthy sense of perspective about what's important and what hills aren't worth dying on. I've seen Dan bring all of this to bear on his political campaigns, on the City Council, at the City Planning Commission, and most important, and this is the real secret of why I was invited to present this award, on the Little League field, where Dan and I are on our third season collaborating as coaches of the small but mighty West Side Sharks. And I will just say this, anyone who doubted whether Dan Garodnick could get City of Yes done hasn't seen him run a fielding drill with a dozen 13-year-old boys. But as someone who has worked in government and politics for the better part of my career, I cannot overstate just how unusual Dan's combination of skills and personal qualities truly is. At some point along the way, I had the humbling realization that most of the time when I or someone else in government got something done, it would have happened if someone else who was reasonably competent had been in the same role. Every so often, however, the uniquely right person is in the right role at the right moment, and something is accomplished that never would have been achieved but for their involvement. That is what happened with Dan Garodnick and City of Yes. I think it is fair to say that only Dan Garodnick, in his role as City Planning Commissioner, at a truly difficult and challenging moment for New York City government, could have found the incredibly narrow and knotty path to achieving the most significant citywide planning reform in my lifetime. And so it is with great pleasure that I present CHPC's Impact Award for Planning to my friend, our City Planning Commissioner, Dan Garodnick.
Thank you, Micah. I really appreciate that. You all know Micah Lasher was recently elected to the Assembly, and we have in Micah such an incredibly smart and dynamic new member of the legislature. I am really looking forward to lots of great things from him and not just another victory with the Sharks on the West Side. I want to thank CHPC, to Howard, and to the entire team here for this very generous recognition. CHPC has long been one of the clearest and most insightful voices in the housing conversation. And it is a real honor to be able to accept this award and to share a few thoughts on our work at the Department of City Planning to address the city's housing crisis. I think it is not an overstatement to say that December 5th, 2024 was a watershed moment for housing in our city. When the City Council approved City of Yes for housing opportunity, they approved the most pro-housing zoning plan in New York City's history, one which will enable, yes, let's give it a round of applause. It will enable 82,000 homes over 15 years. And to put that into some perspective, that is more housing than all neighborhood rezonings during the Bloomberg administration and twice as many as during the de Blasio administration in a single action. And just as importantly, City of Yes encourages housing in every neighborhood, every single neighborhood. A decisive break from our unbalanced status quo and a big step forward for fair housing. A question that I am frequently asked, what were the key elements to getting this thing done? How did we pass citywide zoning updates never before attempted in a town where smaller efforts have often stalled? Well, part of the answer to that is that the tide has turned. More and more people are connecting the pain of the housing crisis with the lack of affordable and available housing options. That is in no small part due to the extraordinary efforts of the people in this room. And even compared to just a few years ago, there's a much greater recognition across the political spectrum that we need to create more housing if we want to bring down the costs for everyone. People see gentrification, displacement, homelessness, and importantly, the wild imbalance of power between landlords and tenants. They all stem from a lack of adequate housing. And people increasingly see that we cannot continue to pit income-restricted affordable housing against market-rate housing. If we're going to actually bring costs down, we need to build more of everything. This shifting conversation is shaping our politics, too. When I was appointed director in 2022, Mayor Adams gave us a very clear mandate to swing for the fences on housing. When Speaker Adams and the City Council passed a fair housing framework in 2023, they demonstrated their intent to grapple seriously with these issues. And we maintained a strong and productive working relationship throughout this process. But this just provided an opening. We still had to explain why City of Yes was the right solution for the housing shortage. Because after all, for everyone who isn't steeped in planning policy, zoning is dry. It's even impenetrable, except to Howard. Howard loves it. I speak to enough audiences to know that as soon as I say the word zoning or streetscape improvements or FAR, I watch as people immediately turn their attention to whatever is on their phones. We can't expect people to support something that they don't understand. And, to put it more starkly, we should expect people to be deeply skeptical of and reject things that we cannot explain clearly. So we began a simple premise here. The housing crisis is not inevitable. It's a product of our own policies, and it's within our power as the City of New York to fix. Skyrocketing rents and limited options do not need to be the price of admission to live in New York City. We do not need to live this way. And as we made our case, we worked to meet people where they were. We produced plain language and multilingual guides, FAQs, infographics, videos, visual explainers, anything we could think to do to make it more accessible, we did. We demonstrated how restrictive zoning rules impacted people's daily lives, driving up rents, lengthening commutes, putting distance between families, and pushing home ownership increasingly out of reach. And we tried to talk to everyone. Over 175 community board presentations. I will remind you, we have 59 community boards. A citywide day of action, and constant outreach to people across the spectrum. We created space for real questions, and we gave real answers. Now, I know how important these efforts are. I remember what it felt like as a member of the City Council being given dense and jargon-filled presentations about zoning text that, despite my very best efforts, I just could not digest in a 45-minute meeting with the Department of City Planning. And I did not want others to feel that way. And I believe that our efforts here made a difference. Case in point, back in 2015, 2016, when zoning for quality and affordability was proposed along with mandatory inclusionary housing, only 6 community boards supported those proposals. And I will remind you, those proposals were expected to create 0 units of housing. Fast forward to 2024. City of Yes got triple that number, with most people at the City Planning Commission and at the City Council public hearings testifying in favor. So, all this is to say that yes, it was historic. We also passed 2 other citywide City of Yes initiatives, each a text amendment, each passed in the last year, and each motivated by a desire to bring decades-old zoning rules into the 21st century, pave the way to a greener and more prosperous future. Our new, more flexible rules, delivered through City of Yes for carbon neutrality and for economic opportunity, will support our transition to a green economy, help fill empty storefronts, and support small businesses and growing industries. This is big stuff, and indeed, the 3 City of Yes initiatives collectively represented the biggest updates to zoning since the modern zoning resolution was created in 1961. But hear me when I say that City of Yes does not mark an end. It's a beginning. We need to build on the momentum that we've generated and carry the lessons that we have learned forward. We need to be proactive. We need to meet people where they are. We need to connect the dots between jargony policy and real life. That's why we are full steam ahead with an ambitious neighborhood planning agenda in Midtown South, Atlantic Avenue, Jamaica, and Long Island City. Together, these plans can bring another 40,000 new homes. It's why we've launched the Manhattan Plan, which aims to deliver 100,000 new homes in the next decade. And as we advance this work forward, I do want to take a moment to thank the incredible team at the Department of City Planning. Some of them are here. Thank you for everything you did. And across city government, our partners in City Hall, please. And I want to give special recognition to the former first deputy mayor, Maria Torres Springer, who is here with us today, who moved mountains in this effort. Maria, thank you for your partnership and friendship. We could not have done any of this without you, so thank you. And my gratitude as well to everyone here today for your invaluable support and partnership. And thanks again to you, Howard, and to CHPC for your tireless work to drive our housing conversation forward and to steer our city toward a brighter future. We made great progress together this year. Let's keep it going. Thank you so much for this incredible honor.